When my son said I wasn't expected for Christmas, I didn't ask why. I didn't beg. I just looked at him standing in the doorway of the house I helped him buy and said, "Understood." Then I walked back to my truck, turned the engine on. And by the time I reached the stop sign at the end of his street, I'd already called the bank. The mortgage payments were made, finished. And that was just the beginning of my plan. Justice would be restored. Arrogance would be punished. You won't believe what I did next. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and tell me. In the comments, would you have stayed and argued, or left like I did? The snow hadn't stuck yet, but the air in Anchorage that morning felt sharp enough to cut bone. I'd driven the old Silverado down from Palmer 42 miles each way because Josh had asked if I could help hang lights around the garage for the kids. Just need a ladder in your army hands. He joked on the phone 3 nights ago. I hadn't missed a Christmas with my son since Desert Storm. Not when I was stationed in Germany. Not when his mother passed. Not when I had a shattered left hip from a training accident and needed a cane just to reach the porch. Christmas wasn't optional. It was the anchor that kept us from drifting apart after life yanked us in different directions. But that morning, standing beside his neatly trimmed hedges and inflatable snowmen wobbling in the wind, he didn't even offer me coffee. "I'm going to say this straight, Dad," Josh began, shifting on the threshold, like he didn't want to be part of his own mouth. "This year, you're not expected for Christmas." Expected? The word was cold. It wasn't "you're not invited." It wasn't "please understand." It was a memo. A logistical notice, like I was a contractor whose presence wasn't required this season. I looked past him. His wife, Erin, moved around the kitchen. She didn't look up. There was a roast in the oven. Kids' drawings taped to the fridge, my grandson's little boots by the fireplace, the same boots I'd ordered from a tactical gear site, because he told me he wanted to be like Grandpa. "Something?" I said. I kept my voice level. "It's not about you," Josh sighed. "Erin's parents are flying in from Portland this year, and they have traditions." "Traditions?" I repeated, nodding slowly. "Look, maybe we can do something the day after. Brunch or whatever. Brunch." I hadn't driven through black ice and loaded that ladder for brunch. But I smiled the way a soldier does when he's outranked, but not out hot. "Understood," I said. I turned around by the time I hit the freeway ramp. The windshield fog had cleared, but something colder settled behind my ribs. I drove in silence. The heater hummed. Josh's voice echoed. "Not expected." I'd co-signed the mortgage on that house 4 years ago. He and Erin were drowning in a 2-bedroom duplex when he called, voice cracking. "Dad, there's a VIA-backed loan I might qualify for, but my credit's shot from the hospital bills. Can you help?" I didn't hesitate. I didn't ask questions. I helped them lock a 3.5% rate, fronted $30,000 from my military pension for the down payment. And then I did something most fathers don't. I took on $1,875 a month there, mortgage automatically from my account. My VA benefits went in. Their house came out. That's what fathers do when they want their kids to stand on something solid. They stood. Then they forgot who poured the concrete. Back home in Vasily, my modest 2-bedroom on the edge of the trees, the paint was peeling, the roof needed patching. And the carpet was the old rough tan I'd stopped noticing in 2003. I hung up my jacket, sat at the kitchen table, and stared at the photo on the fridge. Josh in his graduation cap, grinning ear to ear. Maria, his mother, holding the diploma like it was gold. Me in uniform pretending I didn't cry in the car later. We looked like a family in that photo. I pulled out the folder I hadn't touched since spring. Mortgage records. Wire transfers. The family loan agreement. The slow, boring paper you only look at when something's broken. Well, something was broken. At 11:42 a.m., I called the bank. "Mr. Carell, how can we help you today?" the woman said, voice warm like they teach in training. "I need to cancel a standing payment." "Certainly. May I have the account number?" I read it off without looking. "Numbers keep soldiers alive. Recurring mortgage payment to Wells Fargo, $1,875 monthly," she confirmed. "Pause or cancel entirely." I looked out the window. The first flakes started falling, slow and methodical, like someone shaking a white blanket over the valley. "Cancel," I said. "Effective immediately." I hung up and stared at nothing for a long beat. Ranger, my old brown mutt, thumped his tail on the linoleum like a soft drum roll. It's just paperwork, buddy, I told him. It's just respect. I dialed one more number. Tom Hennessy. Short, sharp-eyed, retired jag. We served together. He was with me the day I wired that $30,000. He told me then, Dan, don't call it a gift. Draw up a family loan agreement. Court a junior deed of trust. You're not controlling, just keeping the peace with paper. Tom picked up on the second ring. You sound like a man who finally exhaled. I canceled the autopay, I said. Good, he replied. You were training wheels. Time to take 'em off. We protected it, right? I asked. Legally, your junior lien is recorded. The loan agreement is clean. You deferred repayment for 5 years, but you reserved the right to call the note in the event. How did you phrase it? Of disrespect or exclusion from major family events. He chuckled. Your wife wrote that line. Maria wrote the line, I said. My throat went tight. God, I miss her. She had a spine made of braided steel, Tom said gently. What do you want to do now? Not punish, I said. Not humiliate, just stop paying for disrespect. Let him be a man. If he needs me, I'll show up in the ways that build, not enable. Then you're doing it right, Tom said. Draft a friendly letter. No legalese. They'll come calling when the bank pings them about the change. Be ready. I am, I said. I'm tired of feeling like a jacket hung in someone else's house. Then hang your own lights, Tom replied. Cook your own roast. I hung up, turned on the radio, pulled a dusty box of lights from the closet, hammered a nail in the doorway and strung them crooked. By dark, my kitchen glowed warm and ridiculous. Ranger stared at the twinkling red like maybe it would bark on command. I laughed, set a roast in the oven with garlic and onion, and sat. At the table with the old photo of Maria smiling like she'd heard a secret only kindness tells, I slept badly. I woke at 2:13 a.m., stared at the ceiling, and listened to the heater click on and off. I told myself, you set a boundary. You didn't curse. You didn't shout. You canceled a payment and cooked a roast. Sleep, Dan. Sleep. At 4:27, I did the next day. The frost cobwebbed the windows. I walked Ranger along the trail behind the house, and the air burned sweet in the chest like peppermint. I stopped by the hardware store in Vasilla, bought a new shovel, a roll of ribbon, and 2 long strings of soft LEDs that don't blink like emergency lights. Steady. Calm. I hung them on the porch. I wired a simple star at the roof edge. My place looked like someone lived here, looked like welcome. One text came in that night from my niece, Maya. Uncle D, VFW dinner next week. Need a Santa. You in? Is the suit big enough? I wrote. She sent back a photo of a giant red costume and boots that looked like they once belonged to a wrestler. We got you, she said. That's how you build a different Christmas when your invitation gets pulled. You find the open doors. You don't bang on the ones that lock. 2 days later, I had 20 missed calls. I was at the VFW hall in Palmer, hauling tables with Tom and a couple old boys who still wore their parade caps straight. The place smelled like coffee and floor cleaner. Someone had hung a string of bells that clattered every time we bumped a chair. My phone buzzed. I ignored it, buzzed again. Dom. Tom glanced at my pocket. They noticing the stop sign? Seems like it, I said. Let it ring, he said. Call back when your words are calm. On the 21st buzz, I picked up Josh, didn't say hello. Dad, why did the bank call me saying the automatic payment was canceled? What's going on? We're 2 days from the first. I canceled it, I said. You can't just... I can, I replied. It's my account, my decision, my money. He muffled the phone. Anxious-haired Aaron in the background, anxious. He came back, breath fast. Dad, the escrow's in that. Property taxes, insurance. Why didn't you tell me? I did tell you something, I said quietly. You didn't hear it because it wasn't about money. What does that mean? It means if I'm not expected at Christmas, I'm not expected to pay for your house. Silence. Then the crack in his voice. Okay, we'll figure it out. But it's the 29th. Can you do it this one time? Just one more month? No, I said, gentle but firm. I'll help in other ways. Groceries, fixing the garage door. That's stuck. Sit down and build a real budget. But the auto pay is done. You're punishing me, he said. I'm respecting myself, I answered, and teaching you to respect me. He kept breathing, short and angry. Dad, Josh, I said, and my voice softened. I love you. I will show up when it counts. But I won't beg for a chair at my own family's table. He hung up. Tom raised his eyebrows. He'll call back. He did. Twice. Then, Aaron called. I didn't answer. I finished taping the foil over the chafing dishes and went home. When I finally looked at my screen, there were texts stacked like firewood. One was from Aaron's father, Stanley. We need to talk. Your decision was reckless. No, Mr. Carroll. No, Dan. Just a boardroom tone aimed at the man who'd kept his daughter's mortgage afloat for 4 years. I wrote one line back. We'll talk at your convenience with Tom present. We met at a diner off Old Seward Highway Vinyl booths. Meatloaf, coffee, strong enough to scrub a carburetor. Josh and Aaron came in with Stanley and Carol bundled in expensive wool. Tom? And I already had coffee. Josh started, eyes tired. Dad, I'm sorry how I said it. Truly, but you blindsided us. Tom slid a folder open and didn't raise his voice. Let's put the facts on the table. Family loan agreement. Junior deed of trust recorded. 4 years of $1,875 payments. From Dan's account, the text thread about holiday plans, the sentence where Dan was told he isn't expected. Stanley didn't like paper he didn't bring. I'm not here to humiliate, I said. Just to make 2 things clear. 1, I'm done paying your mortgage. 2, I won't use that to hurt you. No foreclosure, no theatrics. But respect goes. Both ways. Stanley leaned in. What respect do you think you're owed? Tom answered without blinking. He's a co-borrower and junior lien holder who paid $90,000 in mortgage assistance. The bank will accept payments from the primary borrowers. Dan will not be supplementing. It's that simple. Carol touched Aaron's wrist. We can help for a month or 2, she whispered. Aaron nodded, eyes glassy. Thank you, Mom. Clenched his jaw. He hates taking their money. That's mine and him. I slid a printed sheet across the table. I didn't read it like a contract. I just explained. Here are 3 paths, I said. Pick one by January 10th. We do this like men or it gets ugly, told them the first. They apologize and we rebuild trust. Meet weekly in January. They take full payments now. I leave. The junior lien in place, but don't call it due as long as they refinance me off the primary note by summer. The second, sell the house by spring. Repay the junior lien from the proceeds by something smaller with no strings. Start fresh. The third, do nothing. I call the note. Legal process starts. Nobody wants that. I looked at my son. I don't want ugly. I want my son back. He rubbed his forehead. Dad, I'm ashamed, he said. I let it get. Normal. Your money. The help. I stopped seeing you and just saw a fix. I'm sorry. Stanley bristled. You don't? Need to confess to a man who cut you off at Christmas? I stared at him. Sir, I was the one cut out. Carol swallowed. Dan, I'm sorry for my part, she said softly. We made our traditions louder than respect. Aaron looked at me at last. Should have called you myself, she said. I wanted my parents to feel special. I didn't realize what I was breaking. Tom closed the folder. Here's what happens today, he said in a voice you obey. You call the bank and set your own auto pay. You text Dan a time tomorrow. He'll fix the garage door because he's a better man than me. And this weekend, the kids decorate Grandpa's tree, crooked ornaments and all. No one argued. Josh hugged me in the parking lot, awkward, like turning a boat in a narrow river. I'm sorry, Dad, he whispered. Me too, I said. But we'll do better. That weekend, the kids brought chaos like a warm storm. Caleb barreled in with a box of ornaments he held like a bomb. Nora trailed behind, one mitten lost between the driveway and my door. Ranger offered them his. Ball with great ceremony and drool. We set up the tree on the heavy stand I built in a winter I thought would never end. I showed Caleb how to twist the base screws without stripping them. He grunted with heroics and said, "Like this? Perfect," I told him, even though it was crooked. That's the point. We put on Bing Crosby and Johnny Mathis. I told them how their grandma once fell asleep with tinsel stuck to her sweater and woke up convinced she grew metal hair. Nora laughed so hard she hiccuped. Caleb placed a ceramic polar bear front and center like a tiny guardian and declared the tree finished. I didn't move it. Josh stood in the doorway, hands in pockets. Watching me watch them? That's how you move a mountain eyes, choosing love. We ate spaghetti because that's what I had. I sent Josh home with a toolbox, a bag of groceries, and my garage clicker. "Come by any time," I said, "even if I'm out. There's venison in the freezer and a snowblower that needs love." He nodded. "Dad?" "Yeah. I don't want your money," he said. "I want your respect." "Then act like you want it," I said, not unkind. On December 23rd, the storm rolled in from the Gulf like a dark idea. Wind shoved from the south. Anchorage turned white. Flights blinked canceled at Ted Stevens Airport. Erin called. "Parents are stuck in Seattle," she said. "They might not make it." "I can pick them up if they land later," I offered, because that's what you do when you stop keeping score and start counting chairs. "Thank you," she said. "I'm sorry again, it's done," I told her. "Let's just cook too much food." By evening, lines sagged under ice. In Wasilla, my lights blinked twice, then held. In Anchorage, blocks went dark. At 11:23 p.m., Josh called voice. "Tight power's out, generator won't start, it's 10 degrees. "On my way," I said. I threw on boots, told Ranger to guard the house, and drove the Silverado slow along icy lanes. I pulled into Josh's neighborhood. Houses were dark. Phone flashlights bobbed past windows like little ghosts. Josh stood on his porch with a flashlight in his mouth, holding a useless pull cord. "It snapped," he said. "It's brand new. New things break." "Too," I said. "Get me paracord." He did. I rewound the starter by feel. "Flip the..." Choke. Tapped the carb. Spoke to the machine the way mechanics do, like we're apologizing for needing it right now. It sputtered, coughed, then roared alive. Erin stood in the doorway, hair knotted, kids bundled like bears. "Thank you," she mouthed. I plugged into the transfer switch. I'd installed 6 months earlier. No more backfeeding stupidly with a suicide cord. The refrigerator hummed. The furnace clicked. Warm air floated through the vents like mercy. We made cocoa on the gas stove. I warmed the leftover roast, sliced thin. Caleb fell asleep with his ear on my knee, like Josh used to. Nora pressed A. Stuffed elk to her chest and watched the dark window like maybe the storm would wave back. "I'm staying till morning," I said. No one argued. At dawn, the power returned. I salted their steps, scraped ice, and left a note on the counter. "Merry Christmas. See you tomorrow. Love, Dad." My house smelled like cinnamon and coffee on Christmas morning. The VFW dinner the night before left me good tired plastic trays, kids racing with candy canes, Tom yelling ho 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 while his beard tangled in the Santa collar. We fed 47 people. 3 were strangers who became friends because that's what holidays do if you let them. I slid a ham in the oven with orange and honey. At 10:14, the door knocked. Josh and Erin stood there, faces softer than they'd been in weeks. The kids sprinted straight to Ranger, who pretended this was a terrible burden. We ate in my small dining room. The kids overflowed. Dad fixed the generator. It went boom, and Josh grinned. "I organized," he said, and we laughed. Erin handed me a small box. Inside, a framed photo. Me, Maria, baby Josh. Tree so lopsided it looked like it tried to sit down and couldn't. Maria had her head thrown back, laughing. It hurt to look, and helped too. I set it on the shelf next to the polar bear ornament. Caleb insisted I keep for safety. After the plates were stacked, Josh asked me outside. He jammed his hands in his pockets, exhaled steam. "I'm in over my head," he said. "Trying to be everything. Good son, good husband." I picked the easiest target when things got heavy. "I treated you like a bank," because it felt better than admitting I was scared. You can be scared, I said. You can't be cruel, he nodded. Eyes wet he wouldn't name. Me be better. That's why God makes us family, I said. So we can see each other's blind spots. From inside, Nora yelled, Grandpa! Ranger ate my sock. I put a hand on his shoulder. Come on, I said. Let's rescue. A sock. January came honest and cold. Josh and I met every Wednesday at my table with coffee and receipts. I made him build a zero-based budget. He said it felt like surgery. I said, good, you should feel it. We cut cable, listed the extra car on Marketplace, stopped ordering. Food like the stove owed us an apology. Erin picked up a few extra shifts she liked anyway. Josh replaced his phone battery for $9 instead of upgrading to a $1,000 flex. They called creditors and negotiated rates. We stacked. A debt snowball like a soldier stacks rocks for cover. I made my own choices, too. Patched the roof, ripped up the carpet, and laid cheap, sturdy vinyl I could mop in one pass. Hung photos of Maria that had been in a drawer because I thought it would hurt. Did, then it helped. Some nights I ate, alone, and didn't mind. Other nights, chaos visited in the form of small people with sticky hands, and Ranger wore a tinsel scarf, like a veteran of a holiday parade. Erin started texting me recipes. You'll like this, she'd write. Foolproof. She sent a soup photo. I made it and texted. It lied. I still had to stir. She sent a laughing emoji. That's what peace looks like now, a tiny yellow circle sent by someone who finally sees you. A week later, Erin's parents came to dinner. I made moose stew that would make a mountain cry. They brought a bottle of wine too, fancy for my cabinets. We ate. We told stories. Stanley tried to help wash dishes and nearly broke a plate. He laughed, embarrassed. I'm better with numbers than porcelain. Sometimes numbers break people worse than plates, I said. He nodded like a man who knows. Later, when the kids were building a pillow fort and Erin and Carol argued about salt, Stanley cleared his throat. I was wrong, he said quietly. I treated you like an obstacle. You've been a fence. Around this family, a good one. I'm sorry. Thank you, I said simply. It's easier to move forward when we call things by their names. He smiled. You get that from the army? From Maria? I said. And we both smiled like we'd been caught. In February, Tom formalized the plan. Josh and Erin would refinance by July to remove me from the primary note. The junior lien would be paid at closing. If they missed July, an automatic $100 monthly repayment would start. No more, we forgot. We all signed. Erin cried. Josh shook like a man whose chest was finally untying. I didn't tell them I opened a $529 plan for each kid. Just $100 a month. Not much. But it's a promise. I'm not paying for your house anymore. I'm paying for your future. 1. Night, I wrote a letter to Maria and tucked it into her cookbook on the cinnamon roll page. We did it, I wrote. We pulled him back without letting him drown us. Your claws saved me from being a coward. I wanted to keep paying and complaining. Instead, I stood up and cooked my own roast. March was stubborn. The light stretched. A little longer, but snow came anyway. Josh called on a Thursday. Range this weekend? He asked I'd been trash. Bring your hands, I said. I'll bring the ammo. We drove out past Palmer where the sound gets swallowed. By trees, he missed more than he hit at first. I didn't say a word. The rhythm came back. He squared himself. Breathed like a man who remembered how. Paper started tearing where he aimed. My head's clearer, he said, breaking down the slide. Didn't realize how much noise was in there. Budgets! And apologies shut the stupid up, I said lightly. He laughed. Thanks for not giving up on me, he said. Even when I made it easy, you're my son, I said. That's the job. June brought a bustle of for sale signs. They stuck with the plan and refinanced. On a Friday in late July, we sat in a title office that smelled like hot copy machine in Victory. Paper slid, pens clicked, stamps thumped. The junior lien payoff was scheduled for Monday. We walked out into a sun that finally remembered what warm meant. Josh squinted at me. You free Sunday? He asked. We're grilling. And you're expected, That's a word Like I said, he rolled his eyes. I meant it the right way. He smiled. On Sunday, the kids ran through the sprinkler. Erin burned the first batch of burgers because she was telling me about a book club like the words were new music. I flipped the second batch perfect. Ranger chased water like it had offended him. We ate on the deck, Josh and I built in 2 afternoon shifts. There's nothing like shared sweat to introduce to men who already know each other. After dinner, I handed Caleb and Nora small envelopes. Inside each was a note and a paper that says school money, which Caleb understood as army. Money for learning, and Nora understood as ice cream later. Both were somehow right. Erin hugged me without words. Sometimes the good words run out and you don't need them anyway. Here's what I did after those 20 missed calls. I made dinner. I hung lights. I canceled autopay. I told the truth. I kept showing up. There's a version of this story where I scorched the earth, where I let the house go to foreclosure because the hurt was loud, where I sit in the dark and polish an old boot and pretend I like silence. That's not how it went. I fixed a generator in a storm. I cooked stew for people who forgot spoons. I taught my son to budget and breathe again. I reminded a man who thinks money is the loudest voice that sometimes the quiet man with the wrench is the one who saves your Christmas, the next Christmas. The ornaments were still crooked because children are chaos, and that's exactly right. I stood in the doorway of the home my son now paid for with his own money, and his own courage, and felt something I hadn't felt since Maria laughed with tinsel in her hair. Pride, not the puffed kind, the resting kind. We took a family photo by the tree. Caleb insisted on holding Ranger, who tolerated it like a saint. Nora blew a raspberry mid-shot. Erin's scarf was just the right soft. Josh had a new crease at the corner of his eyes that looked like wisdom unpacking its bags. We ate. We sang off-key. We told the same stories about the crooked tree, the polar bear, and the year the generator saved Christmas. It wasn't a wound anymore. It was a legend. On the drive home, the snow started again, slow and steady, the valley tucked in. I stopped at the sign at the end of their street and looked in the mirror. A man with a gray beard looked back. He didn't look tired. He looked done making excuses. I turned left and went home. If you're listening with a coffee gone cold and a stack of bills pretending to be a personality test, hear me. Boundaries aren't revenge. They're love with a backbone. You don't have to set yourself on fire to keep someone else warm. Bring wood, bring flame, but make sure they're bringing logs too. And if your phone fills up with missed calls, answer the ones that build. Put the rest on silent while you string your own lights. Asterisk, I thought that was the end of it, the boundary set. The lesson learned, the family stitched back together by hand. But life has a way of testing the seams you just sewed. A month after we signed those refinance papers, a white envelope showed up in Josh's mailbox that made his stomach drop. He called me before he called Erin. He didn't try to hide the quake in his voice. Dad, he said, I got a notice of default. I was already lacing my boots. Breathe, I told him. Read it slow. It says we missed December, he said, panic climbing. How I made the payment. I made it. The bank is saying the escrow was short and the payment didn't fully. Toast. Don't run, I said. Stand still and read it again. He fumbled with the paper. It says if we don't cure within 15 days, they'll accelerate the loan. Hey, Dad, we just got approved for the refinance. This'll kill it. Text me a photo, I said. I'll meet you at your place in 40. I hung up, dialed Tom, and said, saddle up. When I pulled into Josh's driveway, he was pacing. Erin stood on the porch with the letter clutched in both hands like a bandage she wasn't sure was helping. The kids were inside with a neighbor, because sometimes the grown-ups need to face the bear without little eyes watching. I took the letter. Read it twice. It wasn't a mistake, not exactly. December's escrow recalculation had hit the same week Josh set up his own autopay. And the bank had reconciled by applying his payment to principal and interest but leaving the escrow short by $217.93. The computer did what computers do, flagged it as. To the machine, short is short. To people, it's a rounding error and a bad. Tuesday, Tom arrived with his briefcase, and the calm that comes from years of arguing with machines on behalf of people. We'll fix it, he said, taking the letter. Then, taking a breath, we'll fix it. Josh pinched the bridge of his nose. Everything feels like quicksand, he said. Every time I stand up, you're standing, I said. Look at me. You didn't miss a payment. The bank misapplied it. That's not the same story, and your kids need to see you say it out loud. Erin slid her hand into his. We'll fix it, she said, echoing Tom's cadence. That mattered more than she knew. We spent the afternoon on the phone with a branch manager who seemed helpful until she realized we needed someone higher. Tom asked for the mortgage servicing escalation number, and they said they didn't have it. He gave it to them. Yes, that one, he said, then covered the receiver and mouthed, they always have it. He explained the misapplication. He used numbers like a surgeon uses a scalpel. Funds applied 12/30 to P&I. Escrow shortage flagged 0102 at 9:18 a.m. Autopay drafted 01. 02 at 9:24 a.m. system posted 0103 past the overnight batch. Same-day reversal and a goodwill adjustment removing the 30-day late reporting. Code, the woman on the other end said, Sir, we don't do goodwill adjustments in cases where Tom didn't raise his voice. You do when the borrower paid in full and your system tripped over its own shoelaces. We held. We waited. Ranger, who I brought because dogs know when people need something warm to lean on, laid his head on Nora's knee while she drew rainbows on junk mail. Caleb built a tower of coasters and declared it stable in a way that made me proud. At 5:42 p.m., a manager with a voice like she'd seen worse said, We're reversing the code and overnighting a letter of indemnification. No late reporting to the bureaus. Your refinance will not be impacted. Josh sank into a chair and covered his face with both hands. He didn't cry. Exactly. He just let the shake run out of him. Erin leaned against the doorframe and closed her eyes. Tom hung up and looked at me. One more step, he said. Ask for a direct line in case a different department forgets the memo. We did. They gave it. We saved it like it was gold when I left at 7:30. The house smelled like takeout. Erin wasn't going to cook because the day had already cooked her. She hugged me on the porch. Thank you, she said. I don't know how to say it without sounding small. You don't sound small, I told her. You sound like family. As I walked down the steps, Stanley pulled up, got out, looked at my truck, then at me. What happened? He asked, tugging at the sleeves of a coat that probably had a name. Bank tried to trip our boy, I said. We untripped it. He nodded, then lowered his voice like the driveway had ears. I told Josh I could float him through my firm's line of credit if needed, he said. Short term, nothing major. Secured by what? I asked. He shrugged. HELOC. They've got equity. No, I said not loud, but with the kind of tone that makes the air pause. Absolutely not. No second lien right now. He's moving forward? You don't hook a speedboat to a barge when the storm's just clearing. He bristled, then let it go. You think I'm trying to control them? He said. I think you think money fixes the weather, I answered. Sometimes. It just makes the wind angry. He surprised me, put his hands up, palms out. Okay, he said. I hear you. No HELOC. We stood there, like two men on a dock, watching a boat find its balance. Then he said, quieter. I know I pushed you out of Christmas with my traditions. That doesn't look like respect. In the rear view, it looked like a blind spot, I said. Y'all have them. He nodded, then did something harder. Next Christmas, he said, we come to your place, or wherever you say. Let's get through this paperwork first, I said. Then we'll talk about ham. The refinance closed as planned. The junior lien payoff hit my account the following Monday. I drove to the credit union and sat with the deposit slip in. My hand longer than the teller needed me to. I'm not a man who cries in banks. But I put my palm over that number and closed my eyes and saw Maria at our old kitchen table, sliding a legal pad toward me like a charm. I didn't. She'd say, make a plan. You don't have to be loud to be strong. I used some of that money for the boring kindnesses a house needs: roof, windows, a new water heater that didn't introduce itself with a thump. I moved a chunk into those 529 plans for the kids. I wrote a check to the VFW for the December dinner. No one needs to know who bought the hams. They just need to taste them. And one more thing. I set up a small scholarship in Maria's name for a local high school senior who wanted to study nursing. She would have liked that. She believed in hands that healed. Spring slid in grudgingly, as Alaska likes to do. Light, stretched, then stretched again, until it was never quite dark. I took Ranger down to the river when the ice broke and threw a stick into water that forgot it was supposed to be hard. He fetched it like a young dog until he remembered he wasn't. I got home that afternoon. I went to the garage to dig out a box of old camping gear. A cardboard flap disintegrated in my hand, and there, wedged behind a cracked plastic tote, was the thing I didn't know I'd been looking for. An old metal footlocker with a dented lid and Carol stenciled on in paint the Army would've called olive drab if you squinted. I hauled it onto the workbench, flipped the latches, and took a breath. Inside were the ghosts of my younger self field manuals. Photos of men whose names I still say out loud some mornings. Maria's letters from Germany wrapped in twine and tucked under a taped flap. A small envelope with her handwriting. Open. With coffee, it said, and maybe a Kleenex. I made coffee. I didn't get a Kleenex. I should have. Inside, a letter and a recipe card. The letter was dated the year Josh turned 7. The recipe card was for cinnamon rolls with icing so sweet your teeth remember it for an hour. Dan, the letter began, if you're reading this, I hope our house smells like coffee and you're wearing the sweater I pretend not to like because it sheds. I smiled without meaning to. That sweater had been retired 2 winters ago, after an argument with the dryer. Here's what I want for Christmas every year we're lucky enough to get, she wrote. I want one empty chair. Hear me out. Not empty like no one sits there. Empty like reserved. I want us to leave a place for someone who would otherwise be alone. Neighbor, a soldier passing through. A cashier you see every week who reminds you of someone. I want our kids to see that we make room even when the table is exactly right already. I stopped and breathed. I'm writing this because you'll get stubborn, she went on. You'll say, we don't have space, or it's awkward. Or they'll say, no, do it anyway. It will change us. It will make our Christmas less shiny and more true. Also make the cinnamon rolls from the card attached. Yours will be uglier than mine and better for it. I love you, you good man. Love him. I pressed the paper to my face like a man who forgot how to breathe for a second, then started again. I read it twice more. I called Josh. You busy? I asked. Just took the kids to T-ball, he said. You okay? I found a letter from your mother, I said. About Christmas? The line went quiet in the way that means the heart is listening. What does it say? He asked. I told him. The empty chair. The cinnamon rolls. The instruction to invite someone who doesn't expect us. He exhaled. We can do that, he said. We can definitely do that. Good, I said. Because I'm old and stubborn, and I need a team to make sure I don't forget. We started with something simple. That summer, not Christmas. We invited the neighbor from 2 streets over, the one who walks every evening with a stiff leg and a baseball cap from a war before mine. His name is Owen. He said yes like he'd practiced saying no, and decided this one time to try something different. He brought a store-bought pie and apologized for not baking. He ate it and told him it tasted like summer. He cried into his napkin and pretended it was allergies. In October, Erin sent me a photo of an invitation she designed. Christmas at Dan's, it said in red script. Please bring a neighbor. The please bring a neighbor part made me laugh. Your mother would approve. I texted back, November brought another test because the world doesn't check the calendar before it tries you. Ranger's back legs started to go soft. I noticed first when he slipped on the kitchen floor and tried to pretend he meant to lie down. The vet was kind. He's old, Mr. Carl, she said. We can make him comfortable. I built him a ramp. I put throw rugs across the slick floors like an obstacle course for safety. On a Tuesday, he didn't want dinner. On a Wednesday, he ate bacon from my hand out of loyalty more than hunger. On Friday, I called Josh. "Can you bring the kids?" I asked. He didn't ask why. He said, "We're already in the car." We sat on the floor around Ranger with a blanket that smelled like sun and laundry soap. Caleb told him he was a good boy with more seriousness than the Senate uses to declare a holiday. Nora sang him a song about a dog who eats socks and buries bones in invisible places. Aaron stroked his ears. Josh put a hand on my shoulder, not because I needed it, but because he did. The vet came to the house. It was as gentle as breaking can be. When it was done, we were quiet in a way that didn't hurt. The kids helped me carry his collar to the mantel. I put it next to the polar bear ornament. They didn't clash. After, Josh stayed to help me put away the throw rugs. Found the letter from Maria on the counter and read it again. "You leave a chair," he said. "For him too." "For him too," I said. December came with a fresh, clean cold. We made the cinnamon rolls from the card and misread the yeast step, and we had to start over. Caleb declared the first batch fossil buns, and we laughed for long enough that the second batch rose like it had been paid. A compliment. We set the table with an extra chair. Two, actually one for the stranger we'd invited, and one with Ranger's collar on the seat. Nora put a sprig of fake pine on top like she was crowning him with something green. Who'd we invite? Not a veteran this time. Not a neighbor. Checker from the grocery store who talks to Nora about stickers every week. Her name is Tasha, 24. Studying early childhood education at night, shift in the mornings. I asked her while she was bagging potatoes. "You probably have plans," I said, giving her a way out. She looked at me a long second, then looked down. "My mom works," she said. "My roommate went home. Was going to make popcorn and watch Elf. Make cinnamon rolls instead," I said. At my place, she tried to say no. She tried twice. I gave her Aaron's number so she could vet us, because the world is what it is. She called Aaron. Aaron told her we were loud and old and safe. She came. She brought napkins because she didn't know what else to bring. They were printed with snowmen that looked like they were melting. Caleb put one under every water glass for safety. We ate. We told stories. She told us hers. At some point, she got quiet and said, "I haven't sat at a table like this in a long time." She didn't say ever, but I heard it. Halfway through dessert, Stanley and Carol came in like weather that had decided to be friendly. They carried a casserole and a bag of fancy cookies from a shop with a line out the door. Stanley stopped when he saw the extra chair. He looked at me. I nodded toward Tasha. He did the thing I hoped he would do. He sat next to her and asked her about school like her answers could change the world. Maybe they can. We sang off Get Because Perfect is for magazines. We told the children the story of the generator again because legends get better with repetition. We set aside a plate for Ranger the way people set aside plates for saints. It sounds silly when I say it. Didn't feel silly after we did dishes because doing dishes is how you tuck a day, and Stanley hung back. "That empty chair thing," he said. "Should have been doing that our whole lives." "Start now," I told him. "Traditions don't need permission slips. They need breakfast." He laughed. It was a good sound. So what about the tough second sit-down people like to whisper about? It came quiet, not angry. In January, after the refinance glow faded and the rhythm of budgets and groceries took over, Stanley asked Josh to meet for coffee. Josh asked me to come. I said yes because sometimes fathers shouldn't be there, and sometimes they should. We sat by the window where the sun glances off everything and makes it look like hope. Stanley cleared his throat. "I gave you bad advice," he said to Josh. I thought access to quick money would ease the pressure. Maybe I was also trying to control outcomes because being in charge is how I know I exist. "I'm sorry," to Josh. Didn't let him off the hook with jokes. "I'm learning to say no to money that comes with a steering wheel," he said. "Thanks for understanding that." Stanley nodded. "I'm trying to be the kind of grandfather who brings puzzles and keeps his mouth shut unless asked." "Bring puzzles," I said. "And bring your mouth. Just bring it with humility." He smiled at that. Deal. The barista brought a plate of scones we didn't order. From the gentleman at the counter, she said, nodding at a man I recognized from the VFW hall. He lifted his cup. I lifted mine. Alaska's small when you've been here long enough. People sneak little casseroles into your life when you need them. Summer came again, and with it, a road trip I didn't know I needed. Josh and I loaded up the truck with just enough gear to be ridiculous and took Caleb to Denali for 2 nights. We taught him to read a map that doesn't talk to you. We cooked beans that needed more salt and told him they were perfect. We watched a moose ignore us like we were unimportant, which is exactly how I like wildlife to treat me. At the campfire, after Caleb fell asleep in the tent, pretending he wasn't scared of the sound the trees make when they talk, Josh stared into the flames and said, I think about those 20 missed calls a lot. Me too, I said. I thought you were. Punishing me, he said. I get it now. You loved me enough to say no. Your mother taught me that, I said. She put a line in that loan agreement that made me brave. I wasn't brave on my own. He looked over. The firelight made him look 12 and 40 at the same time. I want to be that kind of brave for my kids, he said. You are, I told him. You just did it tonight when you told Caleb to put the stick down before he lit the tundra on fire. He snorted. That was self-preservation. Same thing, sometimes, I said. We came home smelling like smoke and dirt and triumph. Erin scrunched her nose and hugged us anyway. Nora asked if the moose had antlers for holding hats. We said yes. It seemed right. By the next Christmas, the empty chair wasn't a statement. It was just the way we set the table. We didn't always fill it with a stranger. Sometimes the chair was for a neighbor whose husband was out on the slope. Sometimes it was for a kid from Caleb's team whose parents were working a double. Once it was for a woman in her 70s from down the block, whose furnace died and who came and sat at our table for 6 hours while a man named Stan we called from a phone number scribbled on a magnet made it right. We made cinnamon rolls that were still uglier than they should be and somehow perfect. We argued about cranberries. We sang. We remembered Ranger and pretended the new pup Juniper, because Nora named her. And Nora names like a poet. Wasn't going to steal entire sticks of butter. If we let our guard down, she would, we learned. The night before, I pulled Maria's. Let her out again and read it at the kitchen. Counter with the sweater that sheds in a closet because some instructions are timeless. Make a plan, she wrote. You don't have to be loud to be strong. So we planned. We set the extra chair. We were strong in the quiet ways. You want a final payoff that seals the family for good? I don't think life does for. Good in the way movies do, there's no one speech. There's no one piano chord. There's 1,000 small choices that add up to a story you're proud to tell. But if you need a moment, I have one. It was Christmas morning, snow like sifted sugar on the steps, the coffee strong enough to wake a bear, the kids sticky with icing, before breakfast, which is a crime I will commit every December until I'm gone. Josh went outside to warm the car to drive his in-laws over. He came back in and stood in the doorway where this all started a few years back. He didn't say understood. He didn't say anything for a second. Then he said, Dad, you're expected. I grinned. At my house? I asked us. To poke the bear, he shook his head. Everywhere, he said. He pulled me into a hug that didn't feel like turning a boat. It felt like a dock. Erin came in from the kitchen with a dish towel draped over her shoulder like a flag. At 6, she said, you better be there. Carol walked in behind her, carrying the fancy cookies and a Tupperware full of leftovers from the night before, because nobody leaves my house without a plate. Stanley brought a board game and a bottle of wine that we didn't open because the kids needed water glasses more than adults needed tannins. Tasha texted a photo of herself at her mother's table in a small apartment across town. 3 people, a pie, laughter you could hear through the pixels, brought a new tradition. She wrote, we left a chair. I set my phone down and took a breath. I looked at the photo on the shelf, me, Maria, baby Josh, lopsided Triond, the polar bear ornament next to, Ranger's collar and the cinnamon rolls that had no business being this sticky and this right. Here's the truth. As simple as I can say it. 2 days after I was told I wasn't expected for Christmas, I had 20 missed calls. I didn't answer them all. I answered the ones that built something. I canceled a payment and made dinner. I set a boundary and set a table. I learned that justice isn't revenge, it's alignment. And arrogance doesn't need to be punished. It needs to be humbled by love with a backbone. If you're out there, with a phone buzzing and a heart that wants to be both soft and strong, you can do this. Now, you can be quiet and unmovable at the same time. You can cancel the auto pay and still fix the generator in a storm. You can say no to disrespect and yes to dinner. You can set an extra chair. The snow kept falling. The house warmed up. The kids dragged their chaos into the living room and laid it down like a blanket. We ate too much, sang the wrong notes, started a story that would be told every year, until the pine needles stopped hiding in the carpet in March. And when I walked to the door to let in whoever knocked next, I felt Maria beside me like a hand on my back. I turned the knob. "Come in," I said. "You're expected."